10% of $100 is $10, you're going to have to give me $10 back in addition to that as interest. So you give me, I lent you 100, you give me back 110. A year later, the interest rate would be 10%. Okay? I presume that's something you already know, but we needed to define it officially just to make sure. All right, now let's talk about, we're going to talk about a supply and demand for loanable funds. What we want to talk about first is the demand for loanable funds. And if you think about who's demanding loanable funds, it has to be firms, right? Firms want to go to the financial markets to borrow the financial capital that they're going to use to go out and buy machines and tools and factory buildings and office buildings. So the demand for funds comes from firms who are going to invest. Okay? So this is how we're going to link up savings and investment. So we got the demand for loanable funds. And let's put, draw a supply and demand diagram here. We're going to put the quantity of loanable funds here on the horizontal. We're going to put the interest rate up here on the vertical. Now you might say, which interest rate? The nominal or the real, right? Because you're getting pretty sophisticated now about these kind of things. And the answer is should be real. Should be real interest rate, okay? But let's, to keep it all simple, let's just assume away inflation right now. We don't have to worry about that. And then you remember the real interest rate equals the nominal interest rate minus inflation. If we assume all right, good. We had a slight interruption because the batteries died on my microphone, apparently, or something. At any rate, where were we? Demand curve for loanable funds coming from firms. These firms are going to compare the interest rate that they have to pay on what they borrow with the rate of return that they can get on their projects. And I think, here we go, a firm will want to borrow if the rate of return on its investment project is greater than the rate of interest it has to pay to borrow. Okay? Make sense? If you've got a project that'll pay off, it's a very profitable project, pays off 20%. Whatever you have to put into it in terms of cost, you can make 20% above and beyond that once you sell the widgets that the machine or the factory have made, all right? Now, if that 20% rate of return has to be compared with what they have to pay to borrow. If they can borrow at 2%, oh, that's real profitable. They'll jump at that chance. They had to pay 10%, they'll even be willing to do it, right? Even those few projects that pay, well, let's say 15%, there are still some firms who would be willing to pay 15% to borrow funds, because they've got projects that'll pay 20, okay? And we could even go up to 20%, and there are even some people who will be willing to borrow at that rate because they've got a project that'll pay off, whose internal rate of return is 20%. Well, what does it mean to talk about internal rate of return? Rate of return on a project is the profit earned on the project expressed as a percentage of its cost, or here's the formula. Rate of return, just look familiar? Revenue from the project minus the cost over the cost times 100, what does that look like? Yes.